Hello and welcome to this session of Spark Festival. It's absolutely fantastic to have you join with us. My name is Adam. I am one of the directors and entrepreneurship facilitator at the Van Diemen Project. And I do want to kick off our session today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are all gathered on, whether you're here with us in this discussion or watching wherever you are at home or at work, and acknowledge that the Indigenous peoples are the true custodians of the land of which we're gathered on, and acknowledge that they are the owners, and acknowledge and pay my respects to any elders past, present and emerging that are joining our call. Today's discussion is all around understanding the SDG agenda and what it means for you in your organisation. And for those who don't even know what an SDG is, you are in the right call because we are here to help you with that. I've got a great group of people here with me as well. You're not going to hear from me the whole time. I'm probably the most boring and underqualified person in this conversation. And so I'll quickly introduce myself, and then I'll let Kirsty and then Jess introduce themselves. So my name, as I said, is Adam Mostogel. I run an organisation called Illuminate Education Australia, which teaches education in schools, SDG 4, for those who are paying close attention, focused on quality education. But I've also had the opportunity of travelling internationally and attending events at the World Economic Forum, looking at what is the new agenda and the Great Reset for our world forward, and also at Unleash, the world's largest innovation process for the Sustainable Development Goals. It's absolutely fantastic to meet with people from over 150 different countries around the world and how they use the SDG agenda to actually set a path forward in what they do. So that's me. Kirsty, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thank you. My name's Kirsty Marte. I am a sustainable design educator, writer, consultant, designer and artist, and I've been working on the agenda of sustainability and design now for over 30 years. My profession, though, is in spatial design. So I have a Bachelor of Architecture, but a Master's of Design, and also a PhD, which I specialised in sustainability and consumerism, and looking at how our spaces need to change in order to adapt sustainable consumerism practices. So, that's probably me. But after I sort of stopped full-time academia a couple of years ago, I've started my own business now called Rethink, which is addressing new ways of rethinking about things that are maybe small but big in impact. And I might talk about that a little bit later as well.
And Jess, do you want to introduce yourself, calling from Hobart?
Calling in from Hobart, Tasmania. And so I have spent the last 12 years helping islands to become more sustainable, specifically really helping islands make large-scale commitments, big, bold, ambitious, globally groundbreaking commitments on climate change and sustainable development. So I spent about 6 years in New York actually supporting the leaders from a number of island countries to launch these big commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I've been involved in a huge amount of sometimes fun and sometimes pretty interesting work globally, from the negotiation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals back in a conference called Rio Plus 20. Rio Plus 20. Back a few years back, 5 years ago, to the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals in New York, including attending the concert where Beyonce and Hugh Jackman and many others launched the goals, which was pretty cool. Yay. And so returned back to Tasmania 4 years ago because I am most passionate about supporting my island, Tasmania, to become a global leader in sustainable development. And to happen, really about the importance of businesses, individuals, local councils together to really embrace sustainability. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'll be sharing more perhaps than you have ever known as sustainability leaders, and also looking from Adam and Christy about their examples as well.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, I am the underqualified person. Like, I've got a finalist for Young Australia of the Year and listed in the top 30 entrepreneurs under 30 for Australia, but that's about it. I think we've got some fantastic people here in the room, and I will mention that Kirsty and I are here in Launceston. So we are our Tasmanian session for Spark, and there'll definitely be some more Tasmanians popping up as we go through. But one of the first things I did put into the list was around the fact of this session is around what even is an SDG. And I do want to begin with that, because what is an SDG? Well, it's a sustainable development goal. It's a global framework that Jess is going to be far more qualified than I am to explain. But whenever we talk about SDG, it is because sustainable development goal is a little bit hard to get your tongue around all the time. And when we use this in our language every single day to inform our development practices and the way that we work, we want to use the word SDG all the time. And so it's a really easy and quick way to refer to it. But Jess, you've introduced a little bit your involvement in all those key points in getting the SDG agenda across the line. What are the sustainable development goals? If you want to go into all 17, feel free. And how do we get to this point?
Great. So the Sustainable Development Goals, really simply, they're our roadmap to a sustainable future, right? So we've got 17 targets to be achieved by 2030. So of course, if you're, a strategist at all, you know that, you really want to make sure that to make change, you want to be clear about where you're going to be making that change. So when we're talking about global change to actually shift to a sustainable future, when everyone came together and started debating this, right, then, they really, initially it was going to be, maybe we could focus it down to 6 goals, but then, you really couldn't miss out on, no poverty. You really couldn't miss out on climate action. You couldn't miss out on life below water. You couldn't miss out on life on land. So what they ended up with were these 17 core priority areas, which if we take action on all of those, we actually will end up with a full transition to a sustainable future for the planet. So really making sure that we're shifting not only the environmental impacts, absolutely critical as a real priority. We need to make sure that, of course, in any actions that we're taking as individuals or our businesses, that we're minimising that impact on the natural environment around us. We know that the natural resources we have on this planet are not finite. They are finite. They will run out. So, wrong way of saying it. So we really need to make sure that we're using what we have smartly, right? And of course, we want to make sure that we're not crossing other planetary boundaries, such as the tipping points on climate change, to make sure that, of course, we can drink water, that we can breathe air, that we're not negatively impacted on our weather systems. And importantly, we cannot talk about a sustainable future if we're not addressing key areas around ensuring that every single person on the planet has access to food, water, basic incomes to safety and security. So that's why the Sustainable Development Goals are really important. It's actually kind of like a modern day miracle that they actually were agreed. So when you bring together, 198 countries to negotiate something, it is not a fast process. It took well longer than 5 years to get them negotiated, and phenomenal that every country in the world, regardless of their current political leadership, is committed to this. So what that means is, the UN has a bunch of frameworks, right? When we're leading our businesses or we're in our communities on a day-to-day basis, the things negotiated over there, they kind of can be, they're not necessarily as relevant to us. So what we need in Tasmania and across Australia and in every city, in every state across the world, is really that process of saying, actually, so what's going to be my contribution to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? How can I take action to really fix the big, urgent, ugly problems in my community or in my household or business, so that we actually then start to have that coordinated, people-up approach to transitioning to a sustainable future, right? And so what the Sustainable Development Goals offer us is I can say, right, on my individual level, I might choose to start a transition to sustainability by changing where I am investing my finances. And so I would choose a bank which would be more aligned to not investing in fossil fuels, or that has a really good corporate social responsibility programs, etc. So, we each need to be taking individual to larger scale actions and connecting those into the Sustainable Development Goals.
I think it's really interesting as a sustainable development goal framework, like as I sort of mentioned, that when I was at, say, Unleash, and you're meeting with people from all across the world, like they are passionate about the SDG and the number. There's a literacy around the world that, like as I said, I'm passionate about SDG 4, quality education. That's my passion area. If you're passionate about responsible consumption, I remember right, it's SDG 12. And people will just say across language barriers and culture barriers, I am on fire for SDG something. And it's really exciting when we have all these different things that can be used in our world to divide us. The Sustainable Development Goals bring us together. So there's, 17 goals, 169 different targets underneath that. For those who like to do some data analysis, there's a lot of stuff that you can have a look in there. But Jess, my next question I'd love to ask you is, because I think Sustainable Development Goals, we think about how the UN probably helps and I guess tries to lift up those developing countries. So are the SDGs just for developing nations?
Absolutely not, Adam, and I'm very glad that you asked that. Because an earlier framework, the Millennium Development Goals, they were just for developing countries, but we're not just talking about developing countries, where actually the developed countries are actually often the protagonists in terms of huge consumption of natural resources and also have a huge role to play in terms of how it is that we lift each other out of poverty. And so, the Sustainable Development Goals is about everyone working together from all countries, all communities towards the one global framework.
Yeah, no, and it's a really good point. I think the other thing, I was in an event with USAID a couple of years ago in Washington, DC, and I remember they were taking us through some of the development projects they were doing in other countries. And I'm sitting there considering Tasmania's, the diversity across Tasmania and the regional populations that we have that have little access to some things, going, we need that in our country. And it's sort of this idea that because Australia is a first world country, we don't need to pay attention to this. But I really think if we looked at the healthcare and the education and the climate action and the responsible consumption, if we probably lay out all the SDGs across our whole country and our communities, we'd probably sit there and have some big questions to ask. And so I think it's a really powerful framework to think of. I guess we want to really share some case studies, but I think, Jess, you're really on board with this. You know this stuff. Like, governments have signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, and sometimes otherwise called the 2030 Agenda, which is why it's really important we talk about it with 10 years left on that agenda. But why should every organisation, startup, business, individual, why should they be on board with the SDGs? Should we just leave it to governments?
Look, I think, I'm always a believer in, you take action yourself. We certainly in Australia, our government has got a variable interest at the moment, for example, at a federal level in sustainable development. They may be strong in a few areas, but certainly, there's a lot more that can be done around my favourite, Goal 13 on climate action, and a number of other areas. And so the thing is, if our business community, if our industry, if our education and schools and universities, if we're each really clear in saying these goals are really important to us and this is the action that we're taking, then regardless of the federal level of government, you actually still have momentum towards a goal. In fact, when Donald Trump came in and threatened to step out of the climate change agreement, Michael Bloomberg, who was the former mayor of New York City and obviously is a bit of a well-known global billionaire, he rallied a bunch of his mates together, also the billionaires in the US, and said, look, whatever you do, mate, we're going to stick to the our Paris commitments and action on climate change. And so regardless of the US government's commitment, we will still get the US across the line. And so it's a really good example of the fact of, we each as citizens have responsibility to make the changes that we see as necessary, regardless of where the federal government or otherwise may be going. So let's take those actions. Also, I think what you touched on a little bit earlier, Adam, is this is also about coming together and asking ourselves questions about what is really important to us as a community, right? And so if you're sitting in a business or if you're sitting and have capacity to bring people together and just say, hey, what could we do together to take greater action? Do it. That's where change is going to come from.
Got a question here in the chat, which Jess, I want to quickly ask you before we start unpacking some of the case studies so that people can take tangible steps to adopt the SDG agenda. But do you know any countries that are really integrating the SDGs really successfully? Which ones should we be looking to go, that's the gold standard, as much as it can be a gold standard in a framework like this? Who should we be learning from?
Ooh, so I always love to look sometimes not necessarily at whole countries, but actually at some of the subnationals. So some of my favourites are Hawaii. Hawaii's got a really fascinating response to the Sustainable Development Goals called Hawaii Green Growth in the Aloha Plus Challenge, where they've got 6 priorities that they've targeted, and they're taking amazing action towards these goals. Gathered so many businesses and industries together, but also have the political commitment taking place. I think New Zealand has done got some fantastic work and leadership that they've undertaken in terms of on climate change, on health. They're really absolutely embracing the Sustainable Development Goals. And then you've got other places which have got also really good, they're taking significant action both at a city level. So Amsterdam's done some really fascinating pieces. There's a lot of work there. They've done a collaboration with a woman called Kate Raworth, who came up with the theory of donut economics. So kind of worth Googling that one and having a look at her work. But Amsterdam, has got some really fascinating integration of a process that they've gone through to get clear about what their goals are and connecting that to the Sustainable Development Goals.
No, that's really great. So, look, that's a really good thing to start thinking about. And I think that's what we really want this session to be about, is those tangible actions and what steps can we be taking in our own businesses, as entrepreneurs, as individuals as well. And so we've got a range of case studies that we've had some personal involvement in. So it's not just what have we Googled and quickly found for you, but actually some stuff that we're like, no, we've seen what the impact is. And so let's kick off with some large organisations. Kirsty, you've had some involvement with Fuji Xerox and also Interface. Do you want to unpack those case studies so that people can learn from them?
Yep, sure. One thing I didn't mention in my introduction was that I also consulted with my business EcoBalance for 10 years with businesses and designers and clients about issues around sustainability and incorporating and developing sustainability into those businesses. And one of them was Fuji Xerox. Although I didn't actually help with this particular aspect of it, I did work with them on other things. So I know about this project. And what they did over a number of years was actually look at how they could reduce their waste. Fuji Xerox, for people who don't know, is a Japanese and United Kingdom global firm who largely manufacture photocopy machines. And obviously there's parts that go wrong with photocopy machines and they get thrown out and replaced with new parts. And what these guys in Sydney were looking at was, well, how do we actually reduce that waste? And they started repairing and remanufacturing these component parts and then putting them back into the machines. And this was just 3 guys. So 3 guys in a large organisation. The organisation or the management of the organisation didn't have much faith in them. They said, we'll be lucky to make $200 from this. But they persisted and they ended up opening in 2000 a remanufacturing centre in Sydney. And that remanufacturing centre is now making millions of dollars and employing anywhere between 75 and 100 people. So it really covers, the SDG 9 of resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialisation of fostering innovation. So this idea of innovation of actually, and I think the other really good point here is to think that no matter where you are in a company, if you've got a good idea, it's I don't think any company is too big to keep putting this idea forward. And Interface, the next example I'll talk about also is really about that, about everyone having a say and putting forward that idea. But anyway, it proved to be a really big success. As I said, it covers economic growth, which is SDG 8. They've got over $240 million return on a $22 million investment. So that's huge. And also in SDG 12 about ensuring sustainable consumption and production patterns. So obviously they're reducing waste. At the moment, they estimate that there are 140,000 parts are being remanufactured per year and not going to landfill. They're also reducing raw materials by something like 20,000 tonnes per year. 21,000 tonnes over about a 10-year period, and avoiding 139,000 tonnes of carbon emissions, which is obviously SDG 13. And they also undertake, obviously, a really proactive role in product stewardship. So I think that's a really great case of just a few guys having a good idea, persisting, and also what they came up with was that these parts that are remanufactured are actually keep the machine in use for longer because it's already gone through that sort of repair process. It lasts a lot much longer once that happens. And it also covers SDG 4 education because they're upskilling people in new ways of manufacturing, and they're also providing training and support to people inside and outside their own companies, so to their customers. So they're really embracing new ideas. Do you want me to talk about interface?
Yeah, please go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so Interface, again, for people who don't know, they are a US company, global company that make floor tiles. So they're corporate customers. They don't make that's mainly carpet tiles. And in the mid-90s, they had a CEO, Ray Anderson. Gosh, I think that's his name. Gosh, now I'm going to forget. But I didn't write it down. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that's right. And he was an absolute flag bearer for sustainability. He was, before that, didn't have any clue. Someone actually gave him a book to read, and he just went, "Oh my goodness, what are we doing as a company? This is just terrible. We're ruining the world." So they became a company in the mid-90s, and they became a real poster child for sustainability in business during that time, because they were one of the first really big companies to take this on with gusto. And so they changed from a company, what they say, plundered the earth, to a company that now is looking at restoring the earth. So not just sort of making things okay, but actually restoring, doing the positive things. And they cover so many of the SDGs. You would even, like even SDG 1, no poverty, they have a program that works where they're rescuing discarded fishing nets and turning them into flooring tiles. They're working with the local communities in the Philippines and Cameroon to do that. So they're giving local communities an income. They're obviously also looking after the water, which is SDG 14. They're also looking at SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production, and 9, looking at industry, innovation and infrastructure. So, and that's just one of their programs. They're also looking at Mission Zero, which is zero emissions, zero waste, and climate take-back and re-entry programs. These are all covering the SDGs of innovation and sustainable cities and community, because obviously their carpet is going out there in the world. People are learning about it. People can actually lease their carpet. So they don't actually have to buy it. So they lease it. Then Interface actually look after the carpet for you and replace it when it's necessary. So it's new ways of actually doing business, new ways of actually looking at how and why we need to engage with different products. Do we really need to own that carpet as a company? No, we don't. But we need the carpet. But let's have another arrangement with the people who manufacture it. So there's a lot more detail on this. It's probably we don't have enough time for, but they have been doing so much to to really look at these issues. They've got 100% renewable electricity in all of their factories, as well as 89% renewable energy, so that covers obviously more than just electricity. They're reusing and reusing their products. They're using water, waste materials rather. They're reducing their water usage in factories. They've got a really great transparency and inclusiveness, which I was alluding to before, with everyone. And they also outsource lessons to other companies. They don't hold that information to themselves, but they actually give it back. And they've actually just released a new report on that you could download from the internet as a PDF report. And I really recommend that you have a look at it.
And why don't we, Jess, I think you had a great example around Hobart Airport that you wanted to share as well, for those who wish they could travel to Tasmania.
Yeah, / travel anywhere. So, yeah, Hobart Airport is a fairly interesting little one I recently came across, where they initially started out by just thinking, right, well, how do we actually prioritise where we may impact on the Sustainable Development Goals? So they went through a process and identified that their business really connected as core priorities into around about 7 of the goals, including on climate action, 13, my favourite, and sustainable cities and communities, etc. So what they did, or what they have been doing, is going through a process at the airport to figure out, okay, so where can I really prioritise action immediately? So they've come up with some of their own goals, such as a commitment to be zero waste by 2030, right? So that they are figuring out, that's a really big, huge commitment. How can an actual airport, all the waste that they have, actually zero that out? It's pretty incredible. So they're working with the businesses that they have within the airport to start putting in place new ways of doing things, and also creating innovative little examples of making sure that they're collecting the coffee beans and collaborating with the nursery nearby to compost and reuse those, so that the nutrients are going back into the soil. Simple little things that actually do make a big difference. They're also working on things to reduce their emissions, so going across and doing some bringing in some solid auditors to figure out really where it is that they can impact on their emissions as an airport, and really start moving that towards reduced emissions, absolutely reducing their or zeroing their emissions where they can, and then offsetting what is not tangible. So interestingly, what I didn't realise is that Hobart Airport is actually owned by the same airport owners as Amsterdam Airport. So there's an interesting collaboration there between Amsterdam and the ship. I can't say the name of the airport, but they're very much a global leader as a sustainable airport, and so there's an interesting collaboration there between the sustainability being a big priority, and so that the airport is also working with, as I mentioned, other community groups and businesses. So you start to see that groundswell of action taking place. The more that one business focuses on it, it helps to also bring others on board.
No, I think that's a really important thing, the leadership aspect that comes through, whether it's Ray at Interface, or it's the 3 people at Fuji Xerox, or the airport taking that on board as well. I think that's really, really powerful, and hopefully some of these tangible steps, I guess people you can that are watching as well can take some of these steps and go, how can we start to do this in our organisations? I have a long list of case studies that we're going to try and get through before we wrap this session up. I feel like we need an extra couple of hours to give you all of these, but let's try and keep going. So we've got some medium organisations. Kirsty, I think Westpac's probably a large organisation, but anyways, let's put them into this category, and also Woven Image. Do you want to tell a little bit more about what they were doing?
Okay, so Westpac was a company that I worked very closely with my business, EcoBalance. And look, this was a while ago, so it's not a recent project, but I thought one that was really worthwhile bringing up, because it was a project in the late 1990s, when issues of sustainability in corporations wasn't as probably talked about as it is today. And what we were asked to do was to look at one of their service centres and how we could incorporate more sustainable work practices within that service centre. And I think that, just picking up on what Adam was saying too with this one, what I really like about this is that you don't need to make big changes to make a difference. And particularly if you are in a large organisation, the smallest changes can actually have huge impacts. And I think this project really does start to showcase that. So what we were doing was predominantly trying to look at their work practices. So we did some audits around their work practices to start with. How much waste were they producing? How much of recyclables wasn't going to the recycling containers? What products and things were they using that could be replaced with better products? And how much energy they were using and so forth. We really sort of started focusing on the waste issues because we could see that they were really easy, quick things that we could do that would spur enthusiasm amongst the staff as well as get some quick results. And so some of the things that we were doing was looking at like in the staff kitchen, for example, there was a lot of food waste actually being thrown away. When we did the audit, there was a huge amount of food waste being thrown away. So we worked with a worm farm business and actually got a couple of worm farms into the staff room. And that saved something like 95% of the food waste going to landfill. They were in a sort of park, one of those industrial park areas, so there was some outdoor areas that they could actually use the compost from the worm farms, but they also had some indoor plants that they could also put this on within the office themselves. We also looked at really simple things like how they were using their paper. So they were using a lot of paper through the photocopying machines. A lot of that was just printed on one side and then it was discarded into the recycling. If it went to the recycling, that's another story. But we actually implemented a strategy where everyone gathered anything that they didn't want that was photocopied on one side. And then that was made into pads for people to use, so notepads for people to use in-house. It wasn't something that could be taken out of house but used in-house. They also looked at reconfiguring the photocopy machine to only print double-sided, so you actually had to change it to print one-sided. And again, that made a huge difference to the amount of paper that people were using. Simple, easy to implement strategies. At that time, they were using a lot of plastic cups and mugs in the kitchen. That was replaced with ceramic mugs, and obviously they had a dishwasher in there to start with, which is also really good energy and water efficient. And so staff were all provided with a ceramic mug that they could use, and any new staff were provided with one. We also started an Eco Guardians group of staff who were then the sort of champions, thank you, that's the word, champions of this, and so would help people and answer questions, all that sort of thing. So there were lots and lots of things that were happening, and each small thing made a big difference, and that's the thing I really want to say with that. But one of those small differences in the kitchen, for example, was that they used a lot of those wooden stirrers for the coffee. Instead, they put in cutlery, and they also had the sugar sachets. They took away the wooden stirrers and the sachets, and that saved 400,000 stirrers and sachets going to landfill each year. So a huge saving. The other one is Woven Image. They're also a company that I worked with. They are an Australian commercial textile manufacturer. And they were also an early adopter. And what they were doing was early adopter to sustainable practices. And what they did was they developed a textile made from PET water bottles or PET bottles. So the bottles that you'd find, anywhere where water bottles and Coke bottles and so forth. And they are now producing and have been now since I think 25 years now, they have been producing these fabrics out of recycled PET. And so they've actually saved 4,594 tonnes of PET going to land, or diverting it from landfill, which is 230 million 600 millilitre plastic bottles from going to landfill. And they've consequently also saved, which is the SDG 13, I think, Jess, is the 5,421 tonnes of CO2 actually entering the atmosphere. So, so this is, small changes. That's a small change, really. In the scope of things, it's a really small change that's made a huge impact and provided them with a whole new product line for their business that they have been marketing and developing ever since.
I'm getting some questions on the chat, so I might race us through some of the case studies. I might just quickly skim through our local government ones to start talking more about startups. And I put two here because I think they're really interesting ones. I'll quickly cover that off. So Central Coast Council in New South Wales 2 years ago released their community strategy, and the entire community strategy, every single value, was aligned to an SDG. When you went through each one of them, they clearly set it up. So they, in their frameworks, had called it out, even in their strategic plans, which is massive when you think about probably where Australia is. And then I also think I do a lot of work with the team at Hume City Council. They have someone who is in charge of actually trying to coordinate all the businesses that are sustainable, and they are advocating for innovation in that space. So they're putting waste materials into road materials. They're doing all sorts of stuff to try and actually reuse. And actually, it's almost saying they are a test bed for it, but they need leadership in that space. Ian Davies does an amazing job in that space in the Business Efficiency Network. But again, it's that leadership and pulling it together. And even here in Northern Tasmania, NTDC and our 8 councils have committed funds to actually support and establish the circular economy, like Fuji Xerox, and actually really advocating for it. So I guess from that leadership level, that's really important. But let's quickly get into startups. Kirsty's got one, I have one, and then Jess, I also want you to talk about Tasmanian Way. So let's bring it home with those. Kirsty, you want to talk about Rethink and what you're doing?
Okay. So Rethink, this is my new business after EcoDance. And I've established Rethink to really look at how we can make changes to be and rethink the way we do things to be more sustainable. And I'm looking at small projects that make a big impact. Rather than try and think too big and, it all becomes too much, and then you get a bit kind of, I can't do this because it's all too big. So I thought, start small, but small can actually have a big impact. So the first project that I am starting at the moment is looking at gift wrap. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but at Christmas in Australia, we use enough gift wrap to wrap around the world, not only once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. So that's just at Christmas. So that's a lot of paper wrap, but Christmas paper generally also comes coated in plastic, and it comes coated in foil. So a lot of it isn't actually recycled. If you think, oh, well, it's all recycled anyway. Well, no, it's not. Also, you've got to think about all the trees and everything that's actually made the paper in the first place. So I'm looking at reusable gift wrap. This is actually something I started way back in the early to mid-90s. I actually won a national competition, business plan competition for this. But anyway, I've redeveloped it now. And so it's gift wrap paint, hand printed by me on fabric. So I am really, really fussy about how I do this. It's all about slow design and slow production as well. It's not about making a lot and vast quantities of it. These are handmade items that are one-offs. Even though they're screen printed, every screen print, as anyone knows who's done screen printing, becomes an individual piece because everyone's slightly different. But they're all printed on organic cotton. They're using organically safe inks or GOTS registered inks. When I clean off my screen, I actually clean it off in the backyard on some lawn, and in fact the lawn is growing a lot higher in that area than other areas, so I know it's not doing it any harm, that's for sure. And that's why I use the Eco inks. Any energy I use in my sewing, we have solar, and obviously here in Tasmania we also have hydro. Any waste goes onto my compost bin because it's all organic cotton, and obviously the product itself is reused over and over again. And the other thing I want to do with that particular product is also really engage people in that wrapping, in the process of giving. And so one of my designs is called Heirloom Wrap, because the design actually allows you to write or embellish or record each time you use it between people. So you have that record of those joyful times that you've shared with one another, and that forms an heirloom wrap. So there are lots of other ideas, but that's how I'm starting. Oh, and if production gets really big, then I'm going to come to Adam, because I'm wanting to look at developing a social enterprise. Right. If I can't manage it out of my own home anymore.
Yeah, that's right. So it's great to see that the scale's growing with that. I just wanted to throw what I do with Illuminate Education. Obviously, we teach students in schools about entrepreneurship, which is quality education, preparing them for the world. And sharing that knowledge wherever we can. I'm regularly connecting to people around the world and just sharing what we do. Regularly have mentoring conversations with people in countries that we probably just sit there and go, wait a minute, talking to people in Lebanon and Liberia, and that's all the L's that I can think off the top of my head as well, because there's lots of different places that we're talking to. But I kind of wanted to bring in something else with this, is that last year we made a really strong commitment to realise that we travel a lot. We're obviously going to different places because we visit our locations face to face. And so we've committed to offsetting all of our carbon, actually, but not just paying for it, but actually tracking it and recording it, which is obviously a big initiative in itself. And then actually going out and physically making the difference and making it up, not just sitting there paying someone else to do it, but go out and do the work ourselves. Now, this year we have not travelled as far as we normally would. So it's been a very different year, but it's simple things. And I feel like it's so tokenistic compared to everything we've talked about. But like, we bought all of our staff hip cups so that when they're travelling around, they don't just use single-use cups, and gave that to them. And we bought them all drink bottles as well, so that we made sure that they were using sustainable, reusable products. And so that's it's only small, but it's a step. And that's a really big thing that we've sort of committed to. But Jess, the Tasmanian Way is probably the other end of the scale. Do you want to introduce that so everyone can get inspired and copy what Tasmania is doing?
Sure. So the Tasmanian Way is all about, how do we actually connect together what people are doing? So each of the small steps that maybe the business people, the champions of change, are actually taking, business leaders such as Adam and Christy, and saying, actually, we've got a number of the businesses that are actually taking very clear actions, that they've got long-term ambitious goals themselves, right? Places like Hobart Airport saying, we've got a zero waste to 2030 strategy. Hobart City Council similarly has a zero waste to 2030 goal. Launceston City Council in the north there, they have some fantastic carbon neutrality goals by 2025, and similarly zero waste goals. So what if we start to bring together the local councils, the businesses, the education institutions that are actually really championing the true believers of sustainability, and bring them together to form a high ambition coalition focused on helping Tasmania to thrive. So that is what I'm currently working on as part of the Tasmanian Way, is building that high ambition coalition so that we end up having a groundswell of those entities in Tasmania really making the change, really working hard on the goals and priorities that are really important to Tasmania, and that then Tasmania is also a global leader in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So for Tasmania, there's a lot of discussion internationally about carbon neutrality by 2050. Well, we already are carbon neutral. And so Tasmania can actually push new global benchmarks, such as being a carbon positive state. So we want to see that happen, and we want to support government to actually make that commitment internationally. So I challenge any other business leader or state to do the same. We would love to compete with you on this one.
No, that's fantastic. We're all Tasmanian here in this room, so sorry to everyone else watching, but that's where we care about what we're doing, but we're really proud of what's happening in this space as well, and I think that's really important. The questions I've got here before we sort of give a last question, and we have a countdown time that looks a little bit scary on our screen. But a case study for a recruitment agency, someone has asked about, I think from my perspective, some of the steps that would be really interesting is some of that Westpac stuff around using the paper use and doing an audit process. And I'd actually probably almost think every business could do that process. Look at what their waste is, what they're using, single use. Anything that, Kirsty or Jess, quickly?
Look, there are companies, businesses that can do audits for you. I really recommend that you get them in. They know what they're doing. They've got all the processes in place. They'll give you a report, and then it'll be really clear then milestones for you to then follow to reduce and hopefully get to that zero waste or 100% renewable energy, whatever it is, the targets you want to face. Yeah.
Anything you want to add in that one, Jess, quickly?
I'll add, look at where your investments are. Where are you investing in your superannuation? Where is your bank or personal finances, your business finances? There's banks, Bank Australia, Future Super, etc. They all do not support fossil fuel investment.
And then I'd almost go with recruitment as well, quality education and preparing people for the workforce. So you should actually look at how you are providing training to support those getting to work as well.
Very important.
There is a question here from Ben around quantitative modelling on net economic benefit on pursuing the SDGs. I feel like it's a really big question and we have 4 minutes, but Jess, do you have anything around any modelling that's been done around pursuing the SDGs and what that impact is?
So it's actually pretty interesting, right? Because what we're doing ultimately is shifting from just a singular economic measure into a more encompassing that the infamous triple bottom line, right? So, this isn't about singularly economic growth. The economy is also vital, though, within any transition, right? We're not going to be able to be as sustainable if our economy just all of a sudden drops out. And so the places in the world that are really leading on this, they are doing it because they're looking at their future economy. They know that their economy will fail if they don't start reducing the impact on their natural resources. So, this is something we absolutely need to act on.
No, that's fantastic. We've got about a couple of minutes left. I want to give, if you can give one step to everybody watching at home, in their workplaces, wherever they happen to be. Kirsty first and then Jess. What's that first step that should be taken, Kirsty? I'll give you about 60 seconds.
Okay, I think that first step is not being afraid to put yourself forward and to take those steps and to keep your belief at heart and to keep moving forward with that belief. I think a lot of times we get too overwhelmed by things and that it's too hard, we can't do it. So I think small steps, start with small steps, get a success, increase the next one and get bigger that way and never lose faith or never lose sight of the major goal where you want to be.
Jess, what do you want to add to that?
Oh, I think I'll build on exactly what Christy started us with, which is definitely starting small, and then also a first step from today is just looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. Like they're simple, right? Like the 17 goals are there, and then think about if I am starting to reduce waste in my household, my business, it's connecting into X. Be clear about it, own it, celebrate it, have a party, say we're going to zero waste in our business.
Yeah, but I think that's something a really good point, though. Like, to have a party is probably maybe not where that's kind of the thought process. But I get really excited because actually bring the team in, bring everybody else involved as well. And I think some of the stuff that has been said is also that individual approach. What can we each individually do in our organisations, in our businesses, in our startups to actually lead that? If we care about it in our own personal life, if we really carefully recycling, all that sort of stuff, but we do it at home but not at work, then there's something to work on right there. Have a look at what your individual impact is and then share that and actually get other people on board, because I don't think anybody's really sitting there in our workplaces going, I want to trash the planet. I don't think that's the conversation we are having in our world. We're having a conversation of going, I wasn't aware of that. We now have our FOGO, Food and Organic Waste, in Northern Tasmania, and that's been a really successful program rolling out, but it's an education process as well. And so it's actually sharing that and actually bringing everyone else on the journey, personally, professionally. You have influence to share that. And maybe some of the stuff that you've shared, Jess, around the Tasmanian Way and actually collective action is really powerful. So not only do you do it for yourself, but document it, capture it. The reason we're all here today is to share it so that more people can learn about it and understand it and make it something that other people go, that's really awesome. I want to do that, and almost one up. I want to go one step further, and then everybody's starting to build that as well. So that's definitely the thing I would be sharing and getting excited about. Thank you so much, Kirsty, for joining, and Jess as well. It has been absolutely fantastic to have you both on this session to talk about this, one, to share about all the awesome things that Tasmania is doing, but also just collectively inspire and encourage other people to adopt that SDG agenda and actually use the framework that's out there that's internationally recognised. As you said, Jess, 198 countries have signed up to this. Let's also look at how does every single person in Australia sign up to this agenda as well. That is on you as an individual to be part of that. But otherwise, definitely enjoy the rest of your Spark Festival. There's so much to come.
There is. Excellent. Thank you.